And she probably has one of the toughest beats at WBEZ, and that is education. You talk about a behemoth filled with a lot of contradictions and nuances, and all I can say is I wish we had her in Iowa, because I love Iowa. It's beautiful. It's got beautiful landscape. I moved there because of love. But as Ron DeSantis said not too long ago when he was there, and he was referencing someone who said, Iowa is the Florida of the North. So we do have a lot of work to do, and that's why it'd be great if our next presenter, or if we could clone her, because there's a lot going on with education in Iowa, and it's pretty scary on a lot of levels. But anyway, Sarah Karp has been knocking on a lot of doors, following a lot of sources, getting down to business, and putting people in their rightful places sometimes, because, you got to speak power. You got to speak to power, something like that, right? Truth to power, there you go. And Sarah Karp's been doing it for a long time. Catalyst Chicago, the Chicago Reporter, and I remember seeing Sarah's byline with Catalyst, but also the Daily Southtown. And she had asked, I think Monica and I, like a lot of us, it's hard to read books these days, right? Because we're all so busy. And Sarah asked, well, I don't know what book to pick. Don't all books change your life? And I thought, actually, yeah, that could be. Sarah doesn't have 35 books that she's going to talk about. She did whittle it down to one. And WBEZ is so fortunate and lucky to have an education reporter like Sarah Karp. That's one of the things I'm most proud about coming from WBEZ. We've also had a really robust education desk. So here she is with the book that changed her life, Sarah Karp.
Can you guys see me? That was quite an introduction, and I have to say we miss Tony Sarabia so much at BZ, and miss his humor and also just the morning show the midday show. We've had some great hosts, but it's never been the same since Tony left. So I want to start by telling you about my dad. He is a wonderful, lovely man. He passed away a while ago, and the only thing I ever think of him is how kind and gentle he was. So what I want to tell you, I don't want you to think that anything negative about my dad. But my dad grew up at a certain time. He grew up, back, he's born in the 40s. He grew up in that time. He actually grew up on, for a while in New York City, and then on a farm outside of the city. And his mother was a dressmaker and a homemaker. And his sister was a ballerina, and then eventually owned a clothing store. So she, like her mother, was very into clothes. So when he was raising me, he was a very good father, and he used to always come. One of the things I always remember about him is that at dinner, he was a mathematician. He was an IT guy, but he was really a mathematician. And he would come and sit at the table and give us math problems, me and my brother. And, it was like, who could solve the math problem quick enough? And, I was pretty good. Don't tell my brother, but I almost always beat him. But sometimes just in my head, because I always thought that my father was much more encouraging to my brother when it came to math than it was to me. As I grew older, like when I turned 12, my father, my birthday gift from my father was a sewing machine. And, I was not crafty at all. I had, I never had done, and I mean, I don't even cut a straight line, so, but this was his gift to me. And, I think the message was very much internalized. Like, it would be nice if you could make dresses. I also, and only in retrospect did I think about this, my room at home had many pictures of ballerinas that my father had put up. And I wasn't a dancer. I don't think that I really, I was much more like playing basketball in the backyard with my brother than I was a dancer. So it sort of gives you the idea of, sort of what my father's idea of what a little girl should be. And, and also when I look back, the interesting thing is that I can't tell you what his expectation was of me. He never said, I just want you to get married, I just want you to, but he never said, be something. It was sort of like, be a cute little girl. I think that was sort of his expectation of me. And then on my mother, on the other hand, she was a teacher. She taught for city colleges for a long, long time. My mother came from a generation of teachers. Like all of her sisters were teachers. And she didn't stay with my father, but when she didn't stay with my father, she always went to another man's house. She could never be the mother that would be home, and never be the person that could live by herself. She couldn't go out to dinner by herself. She couldn't go to a movie by herself. And even now, she's 80 years old, and when she is by herself, it's a very, it's a very big deal. It's like I went to the store by myself. So that was sort of what I brought to my book, which is The House on Mango Street. And, everybody's nodding their head because I can't remember exactly when I read it. I was either late in high school or early college. And, I grew up in Chicago. So, of course, there was much in that book that was in my bones, when I heard the voices of Chicago. But immediately when I read the words, the way so many sit with their sadness on an elbow, I inherited her name, but not her place by the window. That immediately spoke to me, that I wanted something more, that I wanted to look beyond the window, The moment that Esperanza reads a poem to her aunt, she whispers a poem to her aunt who's sick, and then her aunt says to her, "That's very good," she said in her tired voice. "You keep writing. It'll keep you free." At the time, I did not know what she meant. But when I read those words, I knew what she meant. Because I wrote in my diary a lot, and sometimes people would say, "Oh, why don't you publish something? Why don't you be in a poetry slam?" But I never wanted to, and I was like, and sometimes that's true. You write not because you want an audience, but because it sets something in your heart free. When she talked to the trees outside her window, I don't know, to me, trees are like life and blood. And when I would get upset when I was younger, I'd walk to the nearby park and I'd lay down and I'd look at the trees and the way the leaves looked. And I never really understood why I was so connected with trees until I read her words of the three skinny trees. Their strength is their secret. They send ferocious roots beneath the ground. They grow up and grow down and grab the earth between their hairy toes and bite the sky with teeth and never quit their anger. I guess that's the thing. Like so much of this book, I felt in my bones, that this was. It said something to me about where I wanted to go and how I wanted my future, and the the words, and I'm sort of like this with a lot of books. Like when I was thinking about what book I'm going to say changed my life, the first thing that came to me was passages in books, not necessarily entire books. There are passages that I keep the book by my bed so I could read the passage, over and over again. And I think probably the words that have rung in my brain for like years and years are not a flat, not an apartment in back, not a man's house, not a daddy's, a house all my own with my porch and my pretty petunias, my books and my stories, only a house quiet as snow, a space for myself to go, clean as paper before the poem. I mean, that's, once I graduated from college, that was a time that I had a place of my own. And, these words were always I'd look around my place, I'd look at my books, and I'd think of her words. And, even as I've gotten older, what I've come to understand is, yes, I did get married, and so it's not like all my own, but in some ways, I've created a space of my own in my life, and like the thing that's so important to me is that it's more about having your own identity than it is about like the space of your own, and that you have a place that you can go, that you can feel peace, and that you can feel free, and I think that coming from the background of where my father was like maybe didn't have expectations for me, and my mother always, she can never be alone. She always needed a man around. That really, Sandra Cisneros' words really they changed my life.